Good evening.
Hello.
And welcome
to Nightmare Nation,
a podcast where we talk all about
scary things
and ghosts.
Yeah. Haunted places in the world and their famous paranormal incidents.
And just all things scary.
Yeah.
To scare your pants off.
Yep. It feels very on season right now with it being October and getting close to Halloween. So our goal is to try to get in as many scary episodes as we can this month.
Heck yeah. I'm Anna.
I'm Annie.
We've been best friends for years upon years.
Mm-hmm.
And we love all things horror and scary. And so that's why we decided to bring you this awesome podcast and tell you all about scary things.
Yeah, because we talk about it anyway. So if we're already just kind of talking about it just for fun, we might as well record it and put it on a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today
we got a good one.
The Conjuring house.
The Conjuring house.
So great.
The Perron family haunting.
Yes.
Yes.
I saw this movie once, and then we had talked about talking about this house. And then...
we talked about talking about it, yep.
And then I decided I needed to watch it again. And good frickin' Lord, I was literally terrified the whole time watching it.
Yeah,
I was
it's a
home
good
alone.
one.
I live in the middle of nowhere practically, and I was home alone, and I was terrified. And literally at the end, I had to watch something happy because I just wouldn't have been able to do anything at all the rest of the night.
That's what Anders and I usually do, is we'll pick like a really scary horror movie and like scare the crap out of ourselves, and then we'll be like, let's put on Parks and Rec for a few episodes before we go to bed.
Pretty much.
Yeah, this movie's really near and dear to my heart, and this story in particular was fun to research because the movie came out in 2013, and it was the first time in a long while, with a couple of notable exceptions, that I had really been like scared by a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like at this point, I've seen so many that it takes a lot to actually like creep me out, like legitimately scare me, and this one did.
Yeah.
And it was met with critical acclaim, and the background in the story is really interesting, and it's just been fun to kind of like learn more about it because the movie was so good, but there's so much more than what was just shown in the movie, which Anna's going to get into now with a little bit of the history.
Yeah, so the Conjuring movie, it was based on experiences that Ed and Lorraine Warren had, as well as the Perron family. Perron, sorry.
Oh my god,
Perron.
I need to interject quickly because I made sure to look up the pronunciation of this family. The Perron family is how I've heard it said in videos. And I realized in episode 2, the Amityville episode, that I was saying the Lutz family the whole freaking episode. It's not the Lutzes, it's the Lutzes.
Yep.
And if I had listened to any video for more than like 5 seconds, I would have realized that. So I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that disastrous pronunciation the entire time I was talking. So anyway,
here we go. Perfect. Yeah. So, for those of you who do not know Ed and Lorraine Warren, we've talked about them before. I believe we talked about them in the Amityville house and just a couple notes here and there with some of the last episodes. But they are well-known paranormal investigators. Ed, he was a veteran and an officer. He was the first to become a non-ordained demonologist that has been recognized by the Catholic Church. So, meaning that he's not a priest, he's not ordained, but they recognize him as a demonologist who can do exorcisms.
Right, like as an authority on spiritual and like paranormal, which is a really big deal for someone who's not part of like the religious organization.
Yeah.
To get that distinction.
Because half the time you're going to priests for your exorcism, so I thought that was really cool and something that I didn't know about. He also got he got that title just by studying the subject on his own. And just becoming well-versed in the area. And then Lorraine, she claimed to be a clairvoyant and medium who was capable of communicating with spirits and demons. They founded the New England Society for Psychic Research. And like I said, they investigated the Amityville house as well as the Conjuring house and many, many more hauntings and houses.
I read online that they claimed, I don't know if this has ever been substantiated or not, but they claimed that they had investigated more than 10,000 paranormal cases in the course of their careers.
Holy crap.
Which is a lot. So they've been doing it a long time, and like they were very much like trusted and respected in the like kind of psychic and paranormal supernatural community, whatever that community looks like. But they were a pretty big deal, and they were involved in they've already been involved in some of the stories we've talked about and will probably come up again in future stories too. Very high profile hauntings.
Yeah. So like I said, the film was based on the Perron's family as well as Ed and Lorraine's experiences. So a lot of the haunting and experiences that they had in the house I believe it came from a lot of the history from the house, because this house was in so the Perrons were, I want to say, the first family to own it after 8 generations of like the same family owning this house. And so throughout the 8 generations, there were a lot of people who died under really odd circumstances. So many of children died in the creek behind the house. One child was murdered, and a few hung themselves in the attic. So, I mean, right
Yay.
there, like, they say that when you have such traumatic deaths in a certain place, it can hold on to that type of energy in the house. And I feel like that's what the family was probably experiencing, was just all of that negative energy in the house. And so it was just kind of coming back full circle for them.
I mean, it's the same thing with, like, the Amityville house, right? Like, the very traumatic and especially violent deaths, like, those leave a stain on that location. And that's, so typical of a lot of these stories that we talk about.
Right. And I mean, this family obviously was the first one to own it after 8 generations, so that's why these stories were coming out, because if you have 8 generations and stuff is happening, I'm sure they're not going to come out and relay that information of things that are actually happening in the house, because they want to keep it in the family, and like they don't want it out.
And the deaths are happening like within their family.
Exactly.
So it's possible that a lot of this happened and like the hauntings maybe weren't even like there yet, because all the groundwork was being laid by these previous generations.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So with that, there was kind of the most well-known and kind of vicious spirit in the house was Bathsheba. So she was born in Rhode Island in 1812. She was married in 1844 to Judson Sherman. So after they got married, she became a housewife, and Judson just worked on the farm. So after a while, it was rumored that she was a Satanist and was suspected to be a witch. So the suspicion for her being a witch started when a child died in her care. So the child's head was found impaled by a sharp object.
Ugh.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Like on the property?
Yeah.
Oh my god. What do we know when this was? This was probably like, what, 1700s maybe? Like if it's witch.
Well, because she got married in 1844, so I'm assuming a little bit after that would be my guess.
Yeah, sorry if you already said that.
That's okay. No, so I think it was a neighbor's child that happened to, and the town folk thought that the baby was a sacrifice for a satanic ritual. And she was arrested for it, but then she was let free because there wasn't enough evidence to say that she actually did it. And I do believe there was another child that was found in her care as well that died. So just a lot of weird circumstances. And one thing that I found that was super weird when I was researching is they don't have really any pictures of what she looked like. There's one picture out there that they think, so she's standing in the front of the house with her family, and they think that is the only picture that they have of her, like, living.
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
The only thing that they've ever caught from her.
Sure. I mean, that was a time when, like, photography was not probably super common, so probably getting your picture taken was probably expensive, but yeah. That is kind of crazy.
So I thought that was weird. But then she eventually died in the 20th century by hanging herself in the tree in the backyard. So that's why in the picture on like all of their media and stuff is the house with the tree and the noose hanging from it.
Oh, for the movie, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yep. That makes sense.
And spoiler alert, that was in the film when Lorraine was out in the back, and then there was a dead body hanging from the tree.
Right, and it was like a woman's body, like wearing a creepy old dress. Yep. So
pretty sure it was
safe
her.
To assume it's probably Bathsheba.
Yeah, creepy. Most likely.
Creepy.
And so based on that, it was said that she appeared to everyone in the Perron family while they lived in the house. So she was the one who essentially was just the most well-known within the house, and kind of the most evil one, based on some of like the hauntings and things that I read from online and everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she was definitely like the most prominent one, for sure. Yeah. So, and if you haven't seen pictures of the house, so the house they used in the movie was not the house that they actually lived in. They don't even look particularly similar. It's like a 14-room like farmhouse. It's 1 story. In the movie, it's 2 stories. So I mean, they they did their best, but it doesn't look exactly the same. But it's just kind of like a charming little like country farmhouse where you wouldn't necessarily expect such levels of like horror to have happened.
Right.
So it's a really dark history of like a very quaint little property. So like Anna mentioned, the most famous haunting that's happened on this location was with the Perron family. So Carolyn and Roger Perron and their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cynthia, and April. 5 daughters. That's a lot of
It's a lot of
that's
females.
A lot of genetic like luck happening there. So they moved into the house in 1970, and they lived there for 10 years. So you said Bathsheba died in the early 1900s ish.
Yeah. Yep.
So some time has passed, and there had been other people owning the house. And in fact, when the family moved into the house, they had no idea it was haunted. The state of Rhode Island doesn't require any sort of disclosure of any paranormal events that may have happened on the property. So, I mean, I don't know if any states do, since paranormal hasn't been like a proven real thing.
Right, exactly.
So they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. But one thing I thought was interesting, I think this was according to Andrea, one of the daughters, who she's now 54, and she wrote a book in 2011 about her experiences in the house and their family's hauntings called House of Darkness, House of Light. And she said that apparently on the day they moved in, the previous seller told Roger, her father, the husband, leave the lights on at night.
Oh my God.
So, little ominous. Maybe like a small red flag.
Okay, I don't think so.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's something you do when you're like 9 or
right.
like 5 and you have like a night light.
Yeah.
But to say that to the person who's moving into your house,
like,
I'd be like, okay, why did you say that? What? Okay.
That's terrifying.
Is there bad wiring? Like, what? So the family moves in. Everything is fine at first, and typical of many haunting cases that we've already discussed and probably will talk about, it starts small, right? So like people noticing things like brooms going missing or things showing up in unexpected places. Carolyn, the mother and wife, would find small piles of dirt in the middle of the floor that she had just cleaned.
That's weird.
Super random. Like, of all the things for a spirit to do is like,
right?
I'm gonna make your floor dirty.
I'm gonna put a pile of dirt right here for you.
Yeah, like in a neat little pile. Yeah. Suck it. So tricksy. And so they would find things in weird places, and then they would hear the sound of like something scraping on the kettle in the kitchen when they knew no one was around. So just like weird noises. Shortly after moving in, Carolyn says she woke up to a very tall woman in a gray dress with her head hanging to her side, which...
Bathsheba!
That's probably Bathsheba.
Yep.
So to your point...
she was hung.
Yeah, if she hung herself and broke her neck, it makes sense that her head would be hanging to one side.
I just have a terrible image in my head right now of that.
I know.
Like,
it's so gross.
Just seeing something like that on
like
the
waking
end.
up to that.
Right?
Like, you're sleeping, all is great, and you wake up and there's like a hung woman hanging her head off. Well, and get this too. She's not just standing there. She then tells Carolyn to get out or she would drive the family out with like misery and gloom.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so she like warned Carolyn and basically said, get the hell out of my house.
And then they didn't get out for 10 years.
Right. Yeah, 10 years.
Good.
Spoiler alert.
Choice.
They hung around for 10 years, which is a really long time.
Good God.
So that's kind of creepy. So it didn't take too long before things started escalating. So after a while, the girls of the house, particularly the younger ones, started noticing spirits. And one thing I didn't know about, and they don't really depict in the movie, is that initially they were like pretty harmless and like even nice to the kids. Like they would play with them, which I guess they kind of depicted a little bit with the youngest girl.
Yeah, I feel like
having
that's how
what was her friend's name? The one that she had to look at through the little like music box. I forget. So, like, it started out by just that, like, the kids were just kind of hanging out with the ghosts, and apparently the spirits would sometimes, like, help them with their chores.
Really sweet.
Like, super nice.
Oh, man.
They're like, oh, this is great. Well, and then it started getting malevolent.
Of course.
So they started feeling like the spirits were resentful and evil, and they started hearing, like, disembodied voices and would see these, like, full-on spectral apparitions. These spirits would show up, like, in full form.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, so it didn't take long before it was like not fun anymore and became scary.
Right.
So Carolyn started doing some research, and like you said, she looked into the history of the house and found out about Bathsheba and determined that their like primary tormentor was Bathsheba herself.
I'm sure.
So according to the family's accounts of their years spent in the house, Bathsheba was particularly hateful and violent, and she would pinch and slap family members. But primarily, her aggression was shown towards Carolyn. She was targeted in particular. They believed that Bathsheba was jealous of her role as, like, the mother and wife in the house, because especially, like, the rumors with Bathsheba, like, killing her children. Yeah. She definitely targeted Carolyn in particular. And they had 5 daughters, so she had, like, a lot of children and was very much the mother of the house.
Yeah.
And she would threaten Carolyn with images of, like, violent fires and apparently stabbed her at one point with a knitting needle.
Oh my God.
Which is, like, so intense.
That's odd.
You've escalated from, like, piles of dirt on the floor to, like, I will stab you with a needle.
Shit.
So, yeah, it didn't take long before it got really, really out of hand. So, this is, I couldn't help but kind of chuckle at this. It's really horrifying and awful, but apparently Bathsheba, like, touched Roger inappropriately.
Bathsheba.
Yeah.
You whore.
She's like, I'm jealous of your husband. I'm gonna touch him.
I'm gonna take him.
So I don't know if she just like copped a feel once in a while and just gave him a little like squeeze when he walked down the hallway or what. But it was quote inappropriate. And it apparently happened multiple times. So Bathsheba had it on for Roger. Yep.
Get off him, Bathsheba.
I know.
Gosh.
You haven't had enough in your life with all of the murder and demon sacrifices. You have to go after the husband.
Right. Leave him alone.
Yeah. So while Bathsheba was like the most violent and most prevalent, there was definitely others. So the family would often smell like overpoweringly like rotten flesh smells, which is just gross.
That's disgusting.
They like talk about that in the movie when one of the daughters is like, Nancy, stop farting. And she's like, I didn't. So apparently there's just bad smells in the house that were not caused by humans.
Terrible.
Their beds would lift off the floor and the heating system would like fail like suspiciously often, and it was always like very mysterious and they couldn't really figure out why. And then Roger would have to go in the basement to fix it. And as we know, if you've seen the movie, the basement is one of the places where like the most intense paranormal things would happen. And the family was definitely like, oh yeah, there is a spirit living in the basement.
Oh
like,
yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, I mean, at the end of the movie, that part was absolutely terrifying. I won't spoil it.
Everyone should go watch that movie right now.
Yeah,
if you like scary movies,
know what it is, because it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. So like basements are scary to begin with, but the family was definitely convinced that like something was trying to like get Roger into the basement, probably so Bathsheba could cop a feel.
God damn it, Bathsheba.
And she wanted to sex him up in the basement.
A whore.
I know.
Calm down, woman. You're dead.
So after all this is when they start to, they can't afford to move out of the house, but they need help. So that's when they reach out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, which Anna already covered a lot of their history. But these people, like, very well respected, very experienced. They, like I said, they had over 10,000 cases that they participated in over the course of their careers. So if anyone was going to help them, it would probably be these two people.
Yeah.
Ed actually died in 2006, and Lorraine just died this year in April. She was 92. I know. It was actually, it was really sweet, actually. I just saw Annabelle Comes Home, which was a good movie, too. That was creepy, by the way. We should watch that sometime.
Perfect.
She was actually, they had a little, like, memorial thing at the end for her, like, in honor of Lorraine Warren.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because, I mean, she was such an integral part of, like, making a lot of these movies. She actually
absolutely
acted as a consultant, like, for the making of The Conjuring, which is super
that's
cool.
Cool.
Yeah, he died before the movie was made, but Lorraine was actually part. And there's a really, really cute picture of, like, Vera Farmiga smiling with Lorraine Warren, like, on her Twitter. We should see if we can find that picture and post it.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's really cute, and they really made her look a lot like Lorraine did when she was younger. So anyway, they get brought in to investigate on the case, and I was trying to find confirmation of this. I'm not totally sure, but I think they started staying at the house. Like, it was an ongoing investigation. It wasn't like we come in and like take some pictures and leave. Like, I think it was like an ongoing thing.
I mean, I could see that just like with everything that happened, and also based on what they had in the movie as well, just everything that they saw and were experiencing.
Right. I mean, it was so intense.
Yeah.
Like, there was so much going on. So I think they were like doing their best to help and ended up staying for a while. But one of the nights after they arrived, Carolyn was supposedly possessed by Bathsheba, and she was like levitating in her chair and speaking in a strange language, which that's always one of the things you hear about in like possession cases, is like speaking in a foreign tongue or speaking in tongues. Yeah. And this was depicted in the movie as well when they're doing kind of the exorcism on Carolyn. And this apparently it like lasted for hours, and her body was like becoming severely contorted, and they finally cast Bathsheba out. And then Roger was like, you need to get out. And he told the Warrens, like, you have to leave. This is escalating. I'm worried about my wife. You guys need to go. And Andrea and Cindy, two of the daughters, were hiding during the time, but they witnessed the whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine, like, seeing your mom, like, levitating in a chair, like, contorted and screaming?
That would be the most terrifying thing ever.
Yeah, and these girls were, like, young.
Yeah, and talking in a different tongue and just not being your mom.
Yeah, it's like, horrible. Oh, God. It's horrible. And they literally claimed that moment was when they witnessed, quote, the true power of evil in this life.
Wow.
I just got chills when I said
that.
And
just to say that at such a young age, too.
Right, right. Well, the quote may have been later in their life. I'm not sure. But, yeah, so they saw the whole thing, and they said it was horrifying. So Roger basically tells the Warrens, you need to leave. It's going too far. And in the movie, this is where like everything ends, right? Like the exorcism is successful and everyone's happy and the family's great. But according to Andrea, the one who wrote the book about their hauntings, like the Warrens never actually drove out the ghosts at all. And it just like aggravated them.
Oh, perfect.
And she's quoted as saying, the Warrens tried to help, but we essentially found that things got worse around them. So,
well, I mean, I'm sure with Lorraine being a clairvoyant, they're all just attaching to her and more coming out of the woodwork that may not have necessarily been there. And so it just probably brought out more than what they were expecting.
Right. So, like, the seance was like a nice climax for the movie cinematically. So, like, then after that's over, then that's a great ending point. But, like, actually the horror continued for a number of years. Because that happened fairly on in their case, and they lived in the house for 10 years. So, like, they continued to live in the house well after the seance happened because they couldn't afford to move out, and apparently had as many as, like, 9 different spirits inhabiting the house at any given time.
Oh, my gosh.
So, they just kind of, like, learned to live with it, which sounds just, like, so terrible.
Awful.
You just kind of...
God, the life.
I mean, if they're, like, helping with your chores, that's great. But if they're, like, stabbing you with sewing needles, it's less good.
And making you contort in different ways.
And groping your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, less good.
No.
So, basically, they finally were able to move. So, I don't know if, like, after 10 years, they maybe had enough money, or they just finally had enough and were like, we cannot do this anymore. They finally sold the farmhouse and I wrote Georgie. They moved to Georgie. They moved to Georgia. So you'd think they'd be safe, right? They finally left the house, but according to Andrea, after so many years of living with these ghosts, they had actually just attached themselves to the family.
Oh, I'm sure.
And a bunch of them followed them to Georgia, where they continued to haunt them.
Good.
So, yeah.
Have they gotten any help at all?
I tried to look up, like, what happened after they moved to Georgia, and they all just talk about, like, the house in Rhode Island. So I don't really know exactly. It must have been, like, less intense.
Okay.
So I don't really know exactly what happened to the family after they moved. But according to Andrea, and again, like, we're relying a lot on what she has to say.
Oh,
like,
right.
There's a lot of the other family members who, like, don't even want to talk about it. Like, Christine, one of the daughters, said that, like, she just, like, doesn't talk about it because it's too upsetting and she's afraid that it's going to, like, make the ghosts mad.
Oh, I'm sure.
So she, like, doesn't
that makes sense.
ever provide any input on the story. So I was trying to find out, like, if they had any other details of what happened in the new house, but I couldn't. So after the Perrons moved out, apparently every other family who's lived in the house has experienced some form of, like, paranormal experience, but not to the same degree. Like, simple things like doors closing and, like, maybe hearing, like, a whisper every now and then, but nothing, like, really violent. Although apparently one person did, like, move into the house, and I don't know if he was, like, renovating or what, but he apparently left screaming without his clothes and just left and never came back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Like,
okay, well.
What level of horror do you have to experience to, like, run out of the house naked and just, like, leave all of your stuff behind? Like,
that's odd.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of cool that other people have had experiences. Probably not cool for them.
Yeah.
But, like, with
cool for
the
them.
Amityville house, no one after the Lutz family experienced anything.
Right, which is why, like, everyone was so skeptical of their story, because, like, well, why are you the only ones, right? But, like, there have been other families who've reported things happening in the house. There's one exception, though. So there was a minister and his wife who lived there who claimed that, like, nothing ever happened, but Lorraine's explanation for that was that he, as a man of God, he would either be, like, A, less susceptible to demonic possession or, like, paranormal experiences to begin with, and B, if he did experience things, like, it probably doesn't look good for the church for him to, like, admit that he was being haunted as a minister in his house.
Exactly.
So, like,
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, if you're a priest or a minister, you have that aura. I feel like demons or whoever is going to possess you, they attach to certain people, or they come after certain people who actually believe in being a minister. I'm sure they just doesn't. Yeah. They don't conjure towards him.
They don't conjure. Oh, I see what you did there. Well, and so actually what's interesting about that too is that Lorraine later, like, after the haunting and everything had happened, apparently she was later quoted as saying that she believed that like the parents, they even say this in the movie, they weren't, like, a particularly religious family, they weren't really churchgoers, and she cited that could potentially have been a reason why their family was targeted so heavily, because they just weren't religious.
I could see that.
Yeah. Kind of, like, sad to, like, blame them. Be like, well, if you went to church more, you wouldn't have been haunted for 10 years. But it kind of makes sense then that if the minister and his wife didn't experience anything paranormal, it would make sense if it was, like, a kind of a religious thing. So the house was just purchased actually later this year, but the owners before, the current owners, were Norma and Jerry Sutcliffe. They actually sued the Warner Brothers studio after the movie because it attracted so many people to the house.
Good Lord.
Well, like, according to Norma, they had people just, like, swarming their property and, like, harassing them and stalking the neighbors and coming at all hours of the night because the movie was so popular and everyone in the area wanted to come and see the house. And so they just, like, were never had any privacy. They were always being bombarded with people ringing the door and wanting to see the house. So she got real pissed off and actually spent, like, several months trying to gather information and, like, working with historians and journalists to try to, like, completely disprove the Perron story. And she, like, ended up putting this giant case together and presenting it before, like, the Rhode Island Historical Society or something like that. And she alleges that the real Bathsheba was not actually a witch at all, and that the number, a number of the murders and suicides that were claimed to have happened on the property were all, like, totally made up and not substantiated by, like, historical documents.
I mean, I feel like back in the 1800s, you probably didn't have very many historical documents to begin with.
Right. So you can argue it either way then.
Right.
You can't prove that they did happen. Yes. You can't prove that they didn't.
Yes, that's very true.
So there's apparently an investigative journalist named, it's either Jamie or Jaime, I'm not sure. It's like J''AIME. So like Jaime Rubio, who he apparently, like, makes a point of investigating stuff like this. He's a writer, and he corroborated her story. So there's some evidence that maybe the story had been somewhat, like, elaborated on in a way that wasn't totally factual. So, like, I have no doubt that the family saw and experienced these horrible things, but there's apparently some evidence that, like,
maybe not all to that extent.
Well, not even necessarily, like, that what they experienced was false, but that some of the history of the property was a little bit exaggerated.
Oh,
so
okay.
I suppose that's totally possible, but I don't doubt that something horrible happened to them in that house. Like, all the family stands by it. There was no conflicting stories like there were in the Amityville case where families' accounts were conflicting with each other. Like, I just truly feel like something horrible probably did happen to them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And maybe the history just got a little bit muddied because, again, 1800s documentation's probably not great.
I have a lot of it.
So I actually have just a short little clip that I wanted to play of this Norma. She put an hour-long video on YouTube of, like, her basically talking about how horrible it's been for their family since they lived in the house and how much the movie, like, disturbed their life.
Oh,
so it's it's an hour long, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously, but I'll just play a quick clip.
Conjuring the movie. Our lives have been devastated by the release of this movie. The movie industry and all involved never bothered to consider the consequences to us, never told us that the movie was going to be made and that how it may affect our lives. Even when they were informed about the horrendous experience that we were facing, no one bothered to contact us. I am the current owner of the farm where the Perrons lived during the alleged events of the 1970s, when the Warrens also became involved with the family. Only due to the presence of the Warrens were this movie created. When I discovered the Perrons' name and the name of the town was used, I was infuriating. It was then that the realization how the occult followers was able to so quickly gain our personal and private information. We will never feel safe or secure again. We have forever lost our sense of peace and privacy. And as long as we live here, we will never feel that peace and for anyone else in the future. We were left on our own to cope with this assault. We are so angry and frustrated. We are experiencing anxiety and stress when we should be enjoying our home and our retirement.
So, kind of a fair point.
Right. Did they move in right after the Perron family?
No, they moved, so the house was just bought this year, and prior to that, they had been living in that house, so they were living there pretty recently.
So did they live there before the movie came out?
Yeah, okay. They were living there while they were, like, making the movie, and I think that's why she's so pissed. She's like, no one bothered to, like, get our permission.
Right.
Or, like, ask us about it. So I was going to say,
if they bought it, like, after the movie and were complaining about it, then it's like, well, you knew that the movie was out, so why?
Yeah, no, they lived there while it was being made, and no one ever, like, asked them about it, I guess. So, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed, too, because just apparently people were constantly harassing them. So they tried to sue Warner Brothers. I don't know if they were successful. I didn't look that up, because I'm not that interested in court cases. No. But, now the current owners... Oh, I had their names written down. Oh, it was Corey and Jennifer Heinzen. They bought the house just this year, actually. So Corey actually met Andrea Perron before buying the house and heard all the different stories firsthand from her. the Heinzens who bought the house say that they've experienced doors opening by themselves and have heard unexplained footsteps and knocks, and they don't like staying there by themselves. They say it doesn't really feel evil, but is definitely paranormally busy. So those are the current owners of the house, and they actually, they don't plan to live there, but they plan to turn it into a tourist attraction.
I mean, that's the way to do it.
I think that's
how much
great.
Money they could make.
I know. Well, especially
Holy
like
crap.
if there's enough of a cult following that the previous owners were like suing the studio for like harassment. Like if people are gonna come anyway, you might as well buy it, and instead of trying to have people live there, like make it into a museum or like an attraction where you can make money off of it.
I freaking go. Are you kidding me?
I know.
That'd be sweet.
So if anyone wants to fund our trip to Rhode Island.
Help us. We'll make a GoFundMe page.
Yeah, we can record and talk about our experiences there.
Awesome.
I think that'd be super cool. I mean,
would.
Given the number of accounts there have been of people saying it's haunted, I don't know how it could possibly all be a hoax. Like maybe not all of it's real, but like Lorraine claimed, like she said that the movie like producers and that the studio didn't exaggerate any more than was just like necessary to make a movie, right? Like they didn't
absolutely
exaggerate on everything. They didn't create fake things that didn't happen. They were just like, it was very true to the actual experiences of the family, and the family was totally in support of the making of the movie. So I think it'd be cool to go there. I don't know when the museum is supposed to open, but
we should keep an eye on it.
Yeah, for
that'd
sure.
Be great.
Yeah, if anyone knows any more about it, let us know. If you live in Rhode Island,
you tell us.
Hey, I found out something cool.
Yeah?
So our first episode, we talked about Eastern State Penn.
Uh-huh.
So one of my coworkers actually used to live right by there.
What?
It's like apparently in the middle of a neighborhood because it was so old. Like all the city was just like built around it.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was just like totally in the middle of like this. He's like, it's so weird. I would just like go for a walk over lunch and go around the block and I'd just walk around the outside of the penitentiary, and it was just kind of there. And
that'd be so cool.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
That's so cool.
Holy
How'd
crap.
you like to live like across the street from Eastern State Penn?
It'd be sweet. I tried jumping in there every night.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like in the middle of like a very random part of the city.
That's so weird.
So anyway.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So that is the last I've heard of the property in Rhode Island where this horrible thing happened, and hopefully Bathsheba is like
back up off Roger's junk.
Yeah. I mean, I want her to be active enough to make the tourist attraction like worth visiting.
Yeah.
But not enough that she's like stabbing people with needles and groping their crotches.
Exactly.
So.
You know, it'd be terrifying if we went there and she attached to us.
No, stop.
And then she'd come out here.
Well, it makes me feel better that like they only attached to the family because they lived there for like 10 freaking years.
It makes sense.
Right. Otherwise, like, how shitty. You like go to like, I'm going to go to the museum and then come back and be tormented by a witch the rest of your life. That'd be terrible.
No, I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
Just don't do any satanic rituals.
Right.
And we'll be fine.
And don't do Ouija boards.
No Ouija boards.
We should say that at the end of every episode.
We will.
Every single episode.
This
we
is
hope
your
you like
disclaimer.
the podcast. Don't use a freaking Ouija board.
That'd be stupid.
Yep.
Don't be
Dumb.
stupid.
Don't be stupid.
Gosh.
Use common sense.
Yeah.
Appreciate from a distance.
Yes.
Or pay us to go appreciate in person for you.
Yeah.
We can do it.
But we won't use Ouija boards.
No.
So.
No. We'll just go visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be perfect.
Yeah.
So, on to our last segment.
Yeah.
Annie has a super awesome personal story from her father.
My dad.
For ghost stuff.
Is so great.
So I haven't heard this yet, so I'm super excited to hear all about it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be real-time reaction.
I've been bugging him to send in this story since we started the podcast because I knew he had mentioned it to me a couple of times, like briefly, that he had grown up in a haunted house, and he gave me like some of the details, but he actually, I think he got kind of into it because he wrote like a giant 3-page story.
Oh, that's cute.
I was so excited. So I'll try to make it go quick. We won't like drain it, but I'm excited to read it. So my dad emailed this to me, and this is his story about the haunted house that he grew up in.
I'm so excited.
Here we go.
Yes.
All right. He just called it Haunted. I like that that's the title of his document. Haunted. All right. My childhood home was in East St. Paul, Minnesota. The house was built in the 1940s, probably in response to the post-World War II building boom. It was smallish with 2 main floor bedrooms, 1 bath, a square living room, and a long, narrow kitchen, and a small dining room that was added to the end of the kitchen, just at the place where the back door of the house used to be. After our family moved in, the attic was converted to one large space that was used as a bedroom by my mom. So my dad had 4 siblings growing up, so there's a lot of people just living in one space. The stairs were narrow and went straight up from the living room to the attic. The basement was finished about the same time and was used as a TV room and a bedroom for my brother and I, 1 bath and laundry room and furnace room. 1 bed in the basement was always located directly underneath the kitchen, and my brother and I used to draw cards or roll dice to determine who had to sleep in that bed. That's a little bit foreboding. I think we know that maybe that room was haunted. So
that one was underneath the steps?
It was directly under the kitchen.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know who lived there before we moved into the house in 1967, but I know that those folks weren't there long, and they never mentioned why they were selling. Ooh, so scary. Through a series of, quote, events and some detective work. Oh, that's so typical. So typical of horror movies and horror stories is you experience the haunting and then you go research it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So we came to learn that Mrs. Olson and her husband were the home's original owners.
Mrs. Olson.
Mr. Olson died shortly after moving in. Some said that war wounds had killed him. Ooh, that sounds like a rumor. Mrs. Olson never remarried or had children. She stayed in the house alone for many years and pretty much kept to herself. Longtime neighbors reported that she slept in the marriage bedroom facing the street, the one used by my sister, and for years could regularly be seen at night through the home's large windows, pacing from her bedroom, through the living room, through the long kitchen, to the back door at the end of the kitchen.
Oh, God.
And then peering for long periods from the door into the yard. Ew.
Good God.
That was me, not my dad.
Terrifying.
Ew. She would then retrace her steps back to her bedroom and repeat. Eventually, Mrs. Olson died in that house, but we have reason to believe she never completely left. Oh, my dad's so dramatic. Oh. And another thing, you should know that the house had beautiful hardwood floors in all the main floor rooms where Mrs. Olson would walk at night. The first time we heard any indication that something was up, I was in the bed in the basement, underneath the kitchen. The one that they apparently rolled dice to see who would sleep there. I woke to the sound of footsteps overhead, moving methodically from my sister's bedroom across the living room through the kitchen and stopping at the end of the kitchen at the old back door.
Mrs. Olson!
Mrs. Olson! Unmistakable footsteps, not like slippers on hard floors, hard shoes that echoed. Too lazy to get up, I just laid in my bed and wondered who was up and why they had gone to the end of the kitchen, but not into the dining room. In a few minutes, the footsteps retraced the route. Before I could fall asleep, the footsteps began again. Same pace, same sound, same route. Same stop at the place where the old back door was, then back to my sister's room. Fed up with the noise, I rushed upstairs to see who was up, but it was no one. Mom's bedroom door was shut, and she was way up in the attic bedroom anyhow. Both my sisters were sound asleep. I checked. The doors were locked, so no one had snuck in or out. I freaked a bit and woke my brother to tell him what I had heard and checked on. As we laid there quietly, the steps sounded again and for several circuits. We both heard them. We both ran upstairs to check. Same sleeping family. My mom and my sisters thought we were yanking their chain when we told them about the night noises, but they would learn. Oh. My brother and I heard the footsteps periodically for years.
Oh my gosh.
But learned to sleep through them. Okay, so if he heard it for years,
jeez,
that's gotta be. That wasn't just a one-time thing. Someone got up to get water. Yeah, no. It's super creepy. So there was nothing to do about it, and nothing worse happened until a year later. I had lost the draw of the card, and it was my month to sleep in the bed below the kitchen. I heard the footsteps, but I barely woke up. This time, the steps stopped at the old back door only for a moment. The steps into the basement were carpeted, but I thought I caught the sound of a slight, soft shuffling of steps descending into the basement. I literally just got, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up.
Everything, I don't like this.
Shit. Do you know the feeling? Okay, sorry. Okay, I was a little spooked, but I hadn't yet opened my eyes. You know the feeling where someone's face is really close to yours, but you aren't opening your eyes because you don't want to let them know you know? I was doing that, and it was a bad idea. The next thing I knew, I felt a puff of air on my cheek. From close. Not a draft. It was an inch from my face, a puff of air. Maybe an attempted kiss. My dad is so funny. My eyes shot open, my head jerked up, and there was no one there. I was under the covers so fast. I listened for steps going up to the stairs or back across the floors to Mrs. Olson's bedroom. No such luck. I was really shook up and under those covers for the whole night.
Oh my gosh.
The next event I can remember was on Christmas. This is kind of the last one. We had a tree in the basement, and the family was eating, opening gifts, and had Christmas music on, having a happy time. You know the drill. We all suddenly and in unison looked up and shut up because we heard a large crash on the living room floor above us. My brother and I dashed upstairs only to find a heavy plaster sconce lying on the floor in the middle of the room. A good 10 feet from the wall where it had been hung on heavy-duty metal bolts. We called everyone up to see. We all knew it couldn't have fallen off on its own. That thing was sturdy, and it was all the way across the room. It was right side up in the middle of the floor. No plaster on the floor at all. No chips on the sconce. We figured Mrs. Olson was upset that we were a family having a good time on Christmas Eve. Because apparently she never had one. We left the... Poor old lady. We left the sconce on the floor for the night, wrapped up Christmas Eve for the year. According to neighbors, Mrs. Olson also wore white muumuus. I don't know. Oh, my dad. Okay, never mind. Wore white muumuus. Remember those? Sort of like long nightshirts or nightgowns, only suitable for casual wear around the house. Mom liked those too. She had several. Every once in a while, a folded one would be found on the stairs leading up to the bedroom, Mom's attic bedroom, when we all got back from school. Fresh from the dryer, she had loaded the night before, but had not emptied before she went to work the next morning. So she had no chance to fold it herself. They just showed up on the stairs. So, not nearly as helpful as it was creepy. I think it's kind of helpful. She's helping with the laundry. Okay, sorry. Here's the last one. So the worst event, as in the scariest one, happened in front of the whole family, plus my girlfriend, now my wife, and my mom. My mom. Cute. And I never knew that my mom had like witnessed one of these things, so I asked her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it was clearly something supernatural. It was terrifying," which is so crazy to hear from my mom.
That's so cool.
So my dad's mom, my grandma, had a dachshund named Rudy. We were all in the living room sitting and chatting. Rudy too. Rudy started to growl, which he rarely ever did.
Always trust your dog.
I know.
Always trust him.
You know what? In the movie, the dog was the first thing to die in the Perron house.
Yep.
Like first night, dog died immediately.
You always trust your dog.
I know,
no
seriously.
matter what.
He got up slowly and advanced towards my sister's room. The hair on his back came up and he barked and ran into the room. We thought maybe a burglar had to be coming in. I jumped up to head in and see what Rudy was barking at, but before I could get to the bedroom door, Rudy came flying out in the air, a foot or so off the ground, tail first in the opposite direction he had entered the room. He hit the wall outside the bedroom door, yelped, landed, and Scooby-Dooed his legs on the hardwood floor like dogs do when they're trying to get traction, and beelined it under the couch, still barking and then whimpering. There was no burglar. There was no one else in the bedroom. We checked a lot. Dachshunds don't fly, especially not backwards. So I think it's pretty fair that she probably kicked the dog.
Oh, I'm sure.
Which is so terrifying. In the room. Best part, I need to ask my aunt about this because my dad's sister eventually bought the house from my grandma.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh
so
my gosh.
At this point, my dad had like moved on to college, and so he didn't like know what else had happened in the house. But I want to talk to her and see if she ever experienced anything with Mrs. Olson.
Oh my gosh, that'd be cool. Holy buckets.
Ooh, so that was super long, but they were all so good. I didn't want to leave anything out. So that is my dad's story of the haunted house that he grew up in. Cool. Isn't that creepy?
Oh my gosh, I wish I would have had something like that.
I know. Well, except for a dog getting kicked.
Well, yeah, sad. Not that. Yeah. I don't want that.
You know.
But like just something similar.
Folded nightgowns on the stairs, I do.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Just a nice little spirit.
A nice ghost that helps me with my chores and like folds my laundry.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
My life would be complete.
Right.
So
anyway, that was my personal, well, not personal, but almost personal story of a haunting that happened in my family. So we want to hear stories from you. If you want
to hear all of them.
Yes, every single one. If you've had anything scary or paranormal, or it doesn't even have to be paranormal, if something just like really terrifying has happened to you or someone you know, we would love to hear the story.
Heck yeah.
So send us an email.
nightmarenation19@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or you can send us a message on our Facebook page.
Sweet.
Nightmare Nation. I think it's 19.
Yeah, Nightmare Nation 19/Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
You just Google the page, or not Google, Facebook search the page. There's also, our email address is on the page too, so if you want to just send us an email directly from the Facebook page, you can do that.
Heck yeah.
We had a little trouble getting our Instagram account set up, but we'll get that done shortly here.
We're getting it.
Yep, we're getting it. So,
struggling
yeah,
with it, but
send us an email. Tell all your friends to listen. If you like, go ahead and leave a review. If you don't like, then don't listen. Yeah. That's fine.
And we love suggestions on places to talk about and different things like that as well, because eventually we're going to, I feel like there's a lot of places that we can look up, but we love your guys' suggestions on places that you'd like to us to kind of go over and chat about too. So
yeah,
let us know. We love suggestions and getting your feedback, and
sure,
that'd be awesome.
Yep.
All right, friends.
All right.
Until next time.
Don't use the Ouija board.
Don't use Ouija boards. Be nice to spirits.
Yep.
Over and out.
Okay, bye.